The meeting to order at 1:32. Ms. Huerta, can you please call the roll?
President Lee Trujillo.
Present.
Scott Harris.
Present.
Leah Oliveri. Present. Diana Summers.
Present.
Robert Thames. Here. John Valls is absent. Alan Wilson.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Huerta. Is there anyone here who would like to make public comment? Ms. Huerta, have you received any public comments?
No, sir.
Thank you. Has the board had an opportunity to review the minutes of the last meeting?
Move we approve.
Thank you, Mr. Allen and Mr. Robert. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Ms. Heather?
Good
Financial
afternoon.
report.
Good afternoon, Board Chairman Heather Hurlbert, Director of Finance. We'll wait for the presentation to come up. This is on. Do you all see the presentation yet on your screens? Nope, okay. There we go. Yep, that's the budget. Yeah, it's item number 2, control room. There we go. Next slide, please. Okay. So for type B, within type B, we do have 3 different funding types. We have affordable housing, economic development, and streets. And so the combined fund began the fiscal year with $4.6, almost $4.7 million. Year-to-date revenue collection is $5.5 million. Our expenditures year-to-date are $2.8 million, leaving an ending fund balance as of May 31st of $10.4 million. Next slide, please. So reviewing the affordable housing, affordable housing does receive a flat $500,000 per year in funding. And so our funds, we have 2 different projects that are against that. One is the infill housing program, which received its funding in fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. And then the project, the Alma at Greenwood, which was awarded $1.1, almost $1.2 million in funding just a couple of months ago. Next slide, please. So then reviewing economic development, we have multiple projects that are against this fund that have commitments outstanding. The Next Door Sports Company and the TAMU CC unmanned aircraft is a multi-year agreement. We expect to end the year with $8 million in fund balance. That is on the cash flow rolling. And then this fund will also receive a $2.5 million repayment from our streets fund from a prior year loan that was given. Next slide, please. Our street fund was fully committed at $1.2 million for the project for Elizabeth Street. It is receiving, and then also the $2.5 million went out of the streets funds into economic development, leaving us with an estimated ending fund balance of $124,000 at the end of this fiscal year. So looking at our sales tax revenue, next slide. We've performed well this year, and so year-to-date through our May collections, we're $425,000 over what was budgeted. In this case, an over-budget situation is a good thing since we're over on revenue. We do always try to budget conservatively, and our actuals have come in higher than what was expected. So that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Thames?
Yes, on the first page, page 2.
Yes.
Page 8, expenditures year-to-date. Do you have them itemized as to what they are? I understand we were supposed to get that. You remember? No?
Yes, so we have, the expenditures year to date, and I apologize for that, is, we've spent, I believe, almost $200,000 in the infill housing program. We have paid out, the several of our economic development, and then we have transferred $1.2 million for the streets over to the CIP fund. So that's what makes up the 2.8. I will make myself a note to make sure that I include that slide next time of exactly. It also does include administrative expenses that are paid out during the year also.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Holbert.
Okay.
Agenda item 3, Mr. Houlihan, presenting the budget for fiscal year 22-23.
Good afternoon, board members. Eddie Houlihan with the Office of Management and Budget. I think if they can pull up item number 3. I'm just going to touch on what changed from last meeting, then I'll entertain any questions that you might have. So the first slide is the expenditures. I'm not seeing, here we go. And we did switch, at the last meeting, we had the baseball stadium in the estimated column of $163,934. Legal informed us that that was not allowable in type B, so we picked that out. And we added the economic development piece for 23 into this fund of the 125. And the other couple things that changed is that we did bump up the admin there from previously it was 2,500. We bumped it up to 10,000, just in case we have any training we want to do or any other admin expenses that come in. And also at the previous meeting, the transfer to general fund was just a placeholder. Placeholder there, and that came in. The final number was $56,724 for total expenditures of $2,893,724 for the economic development piece of the type B.
Mr. Houlihan, if you can just say next slide, they'll advance your slides for you. Have you verbally state? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Can you do it?
It wasn't in front of me here. Now we go. Okay,
All
we
right.
go. Okay. So you can see total expenditures there, $2,893,724. The major business incentives, the item that changed here was the drones. We had it in that proposed 23 budget of $1,440,000. We dropped that down to $1,277,000. Fiscal year 24 would have $1,620,000 in that program for the total three-year total of $4 million for the drone A&M program. Next slide is the small business projects. Nothing on this slide changed from the previous, back in June. The previous, it's the same numbers as we previously gave you. Type B incentives, all expected to be paid out in 22. Nothing in 23. Again, this is the same slide that you saw at the last meeting. Then just the overview. Expect to begin the year with $7.7 million in fund balance. Total revenue of $4.3 million. Expenditures of almost $2.9. And the anticipated ending fund balance is $9,166,000. For the economic development piece. Moving on to the housing, no change here on this slide. Sales tax of $500,000, a little bit of interest income. In the expenses, again in this area we did bump the admin up to $10,000 in case any expenditures come in that we need to pay out of this line item. And then the transfer to the general fund last time was just a placeholder. 25,059, that did actually drop when the actual numbers came in, so the actual transfer to general fund will be $17,484 for total expenditures of $527,484. There was no change on this particular slide. Nothing for 23 budgeted in affordable housing. The infill housing program, also no change, 500,000 budgeted in 2023. Then the overview in this, for this piece of the Type B, anticipate beginning of the year was almost 328,000 in fund balance, revenue of 506, expenditures of 527,484, and ending balance expected to be a little over 307,000. And for the street portion, there were no changes in the revenues. Total revenues anticipated of $3,799,840. Some changes here on this slide. Once again, bumped the admin up to 10,000. The transfer to the general fund went up a little bit from 31,438 to 36,540. And then the transfer to the street CIP, which we transferred all the remaining funds in this area so we could do a street project. So the transfer to street CIP, $4,149,845. That would, for that particular project. In the overview of the street piece, begin the year with 396,000 fund balance, 3.8 million in revenues, 4.2 million in expenditures. So we, like I said, we used all of the funding in this to transfer for the street project. And that's all I have, so I'll stand by for any questions you might have in this area.
Board, any questions? Summers?
Yes. Going back to the small business projects, the estimated actuals are matching the budget on all of the projects. We had talked last time about the utilization of those projects. So were the budgets all fully utilized for the year?
They haven't been expended yet, but we do expect them to be expended by the time the fiscal year ends. Mike might have a little more information in that particular.
Mike Culbertson, interim CEO. Hosting. Yeah, everybody's moving up one. So lift fund's already done.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons we wanted to move them up. The other ones, we're working through the internships that, they had a little something. Now, on those parts, they end up in December and not September.
Mm-hmm.
So the only ones that are fiscal year is lift fund, which is already used up, and score, which is halfway through theirs, and then we'll use all of theirs up. So that'll be fine.
Okay, but that's why you're proposing doubling lift fund?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And also, just if you remember, and I don't remember if it came up, lift fund was using a lot of government, Fed money to move that over, and now that's gone, that's over, and so now they need to get theirs back up. That's one of the things they used when theirs was only 49 for this past fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 22-23 budget. Motion by Mr. Temez.
I'll second.
Second, Mr. Harris. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Houlihan. Item 4, we have a resolution amending and reaffirming the Corpus Christi B Corporation's investment policy and investment strategy for the fiscal year 22-23. Ms. Holbert?
Yes. This is an annual item that we bring. So the city acts as your investment officer, basically, for the Type A and Type B funds. And so as such, we do bring forward the investment policy and investment strategy each year for adoption, just like we do for city council. The changes this year are are more just housekeeping items. The first change is the fact that the name for the comprehensive annual financial report has actually been changed to the annual comprehensive financial report per GFOA, Governmental Financial Officers Association. There were some connotations with the abbreviation in other cultures that were offensive, and so GFOA did adopt the change in that name. The second major change was the authorized financial institutions and broker-dealers per the PFIA, or Public Funds Investment Act. Financial institutions, broker-dealers, and money market mutual funds are no longer required to provide written certification of the receipt and the review of the corporate's investment policy. And then the third change is that we had a competitive bidding requirement of 3 bids. What we found was that while that is a good idea, it's not always practical, and especially in a quickly changing investment environment, we actually lost out on being able to buy some investments because we were required to get 3 bids, and the inventory wasn't always there to get from 3 different brokers. So what we've changed that is to 2 or more bids, to require at least 2. But we try to get as many bids as possible to be competitive. And there is one type of investment that does require at least 3 bids. So may have a language in there that excludes all but that one type of investment that we have to get 3 bids on. So those are the major changes that were included in the investment policy.
Move we approve the amendments as presented.
Second by Ms. Leah. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Holbert.
Okay.
Mr. Zanoni, any executive director comments?
Yes, sir. We want to thank you for considering the budget today. A lot of those items will go into the city's main operating and capital budget, and I'll be presenting that to City Council next week on Tuesday at their City Council meeting. That's the proposed budget. From that point, there's about 5 weeks of City Council work sessions. Every week we'll be meeting to go over a series of departments and interest areas. And this year, because of the reduction in COVID, we'll actually be going back out to the community. We did that in my first budget. We went out to the community, all 5 City Council districts, and met with the community and explained what was in the budget and got feedback from them. In each of those cases, even if we did it remotely, and the past 2 years, we did make some fine-tune adjustments to the budget based on the community's input. So the community input process is a big part of our budget, as is the transparency part of it. So it begins next Tuesday with my recommendation that's been developed with a team effort from all city departments. We've been working for about 6 weeks and longer through the summer to develop it. So it should be a pretty good budget again this year, focusing on some of those basic services, police and fire, and streets and park improvements as well. And that will be presented Tuesday next week, and then we'll have that community input and council input process. So we want to thank you for moving some of these tax dollars into some high priority areas, and that'll be part of my budget next Tuesday. That concludes my report.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate the input from the community. And Mr. Valls, although he's not here, he did want me to say that you can go ahead and use his house for a community meeting.
Yeah, he said he was
only kidding there, but. All right.
Yeah, is that a motion?
It's approved unanimously. There being no further business. Yes, ma'am.
Just so you say.
Can you turn your mic on, please? Thank you.
Have y'all made a recommendation on the street or streets that
Yes.
would be funded? I don't know that we've said that.
Yes, I don't think we did today, but we do have a recommendation. So in City Council District 5, there's the only industrial type park there. Was a former military site. Doesn't really have a name, but it's not too far from Bill Witt Park. And so Councilman Hernandez and I have ridden through there many a times in the past 3 years. It's a former military site that was sold off in pieces and not to one entity like the city. And there's some pretty significant small businesses in there. There's some boat shops, some welding shops.
I'm familiar with
So that has one of the worst street conditions in the city. They're pretty deplorable. In fact, when the councilman and I most recently were driving through there, a motorcyclist actually had to ride on the dirt shoulder because the roads were so bad. He wanted to make sure he was safe. So that's a recommendation. It takes care of about 3 or 4 streets in that in that industrial park. One was done some years ago by Type B, I think, Type B funds, way back 3-4 years ago. So this will do a few more. There's still going to be a few more that are in bad shape, and part of that is because when the federal government sold off the property, they sold the streets as well, so some of them the city doesn't own. But in the general fund budget, we're going to put some dollars in to see if we can acquire the rights to those streets, and then we'll fix them in the future. Because it's unlikely any private party will be able to reach consensus with their neighbor to fix them. And so that whole nice industrial park will at least have good streets in the future.
So that's the area that's sort of immediately across from the new Del Mar campus?
Right, it
OSO
is. Yeah,
campus?
you can enter in off of
Right,
Yorktown.
so it's right next to the street we just improved in the bond, the extension of Yorktown?
It is, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the road that leads directly to Bill Witt with the soccer fields on the right, no?
No, it's internal and it's inside.
It's a little bit further down, after the university, just slightly after the campus, if I recall
Well,
correctly.
yeah, it's between Bill Witt
Past the fire
and the
Yeah.
extension of Yorktown.
fire
Yeah.
In that area, right,
Yes. Next
to the
going
fire
down
station.
towards the creek.
Right.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yes, sir.
thank you.
There be no further business. We'll call the meeting to conclusion at 1:54. Thank you. Corpus Christi Business and Job Development Corporation meeting. Ms. Huerta, please call the roll.
Trades is one.
President Lee Trujillo,
Present.
Scott Harris. Mr. Harris, oh, that's right, he's going to step out for a little bit. Leah Oliveri,
Present.
Diana Summers,
Present.
Robert Tames. John Valls is absent. Alan Wilson.
Here.
We do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Huerta. Is there anyone here who would like to make a public comment? Yes. Ms. Huerta, did you receive any public comments?
Not written, sir, no.
Okay, thank you. Item 1, approval of minutes, Type A Board, June 13th, 2022. Everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes?
So move.
Approved. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Alan. Financial reports. Ms. Heather Holbert.
Good afternoon, Board and Chairman. Heather Holbert, Director of Finance. I will go ahead and pull this up here. There he goes. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. We will start out with the Seawall Fund. So this is for the 8-month ending May 31st, 2022. So we began the year with $30 million, $30.4 million in beginning fund balance. Revenues to date are $5.5 million. Expenditures to date are $18.5 million. And are leaving an ending fund balance as of May 31st of $17.4 million. Next slide. So the majority of the $18 million that was expenses was transferred into our Seawall CIP. Here is a listing of the projects. So we have a total of almost $50 million worth of active projects. Of that, $10.7 million have been spent to date. And we do have several projects that are coming to close along with others that are beginning. And we actually have an update on the engineering. Our quarterly update on engineering is one of our agenda items we'll talk about a little bit later.
Ms. Holbert, I have a
Yes.
question regarding the reserve appropriation. How is that normally handled?
So what that is that as we fund projects, it goes into the reserve and then it's distributed to the projects. Then as we close projects out, if there's remaining money, it goes back into that reserve, and then we'll continue to fund projects out of that. So either that is a project that hasn't been set up yet, or it is remaining money that as we have more projects approved, then we'll move money out of that reserve and put it into that project.
As opposed to just putting it back in the general fund?
Exactly, as opposed to transferring it back into the Type A fund, yes. We normally, once it's been transferred, we leave it in the CIP fund, and then like next year, depending on what projects are scheduled or in the approved CIP, then we would reduce the total amount of funding needed and use what's in that reserve appropriation fund.
Okay, so we can approve something for $1 million, you can take it out of the reserve?
Exactly, so there would not be it would not need a transfer from the Type A fund into the CIP fund.
Thank you.
But that helps us keep track of all those funds. Okay. Next slide, please. Then looking at the Marina Fund, we started the year with $14.2 million in fund balance, have received $5.5 million in revenues year to date. Expenditures of $2.7 million year to date, leaving an ending fund balance of about $17 million. And the expenditures for the Arena Fund are primarily, we have some cost shares with the Arena Fund for insurance, for the ice plant, technology, things like that, along with there were several CIP capital projects, and that money is transferred into our Visitors Facility Fund where the arena operations are funded out of there. Next slide, please. Then looking at our Economic Development Fund, and just to remind everybody, so the Economic Development Fund is not receiving any further revenue except for interest off of the investments. That 1/8 cents was moved over to the Type B, and that's what constitutes the funding over there. So we did begin the year with $3.8 million in fund balance, have received $3,500 in revenues, Expenditures year to date are 1.1 million, leaving an ending fund balance of 2.7 million. As of right now, we do have outstanding commitments, expenditures of 2.7 million, leaving us actually with an overcommitted fund balance of $45,000. We still have some incentives that'll be paid out over the next couple of years, and so we will work through that to see if those expenditures are fully expended, one, and then what our interest income is off to help make up that difference. Next slide. In our affordable housing, these funds are fully committed. We do have $500,000 for the fish pond development and then $160,000 for the Alma at Greenwood. Next slide, please. We do have several major business initiatives that are being paid out over a period of 22 and then into 23. Next slide, please. And then looking at our sales tax revenue, we are positive $851,000 to budget for our revenues. We do budget conservatively on our revenue side, and so our actuals have come in $851,000 over what was budgeted. That does conclude my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Holman.
Okay, thank you.
Corpus Christi Business Job Development Fiscal Year 22-23 Operating Budget, Mr. Houlihan.
Good afternoon, board members. Eddie Houlihan again with the Office of Management and Budget. I'm going to follow the same structure as the B, just highlight to you the things that have changed since the last meeting. No change on the revenues. Sales tax anticipated of $8,589,000. A little bit of interest income for total revenues of $8,605,000. On expenditures, bumped up the admin a little. The administrative service charges show a little bit of an increase there from 144 to 166. Some debt service for total expenditures of $3,025,612. Same sheet you saw last time. This is all the projects that are sitting in the capital improvement program and a status on each one of those projects. Nothing here changed from what you saw in June.
On that page, go back one page, Mr. Houlihan. The Harbor Point East Connectivity Project. Go back one slide, please. So it doesn't have anything on the budget, obviously, because nothing had been funded, but it does allocate $550,000 for design and $2 million in the next fiscal year for construction. And I believe we were going to get a report on this project, but I didn't see anything in our handouts.
We have a report on the Harbor Point East.
So is it even in the budget, though?
We had a lot of questions that
On the Harbor
we were
Point East.
concerned, and the assistant city manager that gave us that presentation was supposed to give us an amount
Yeah.
Okay.
also, and some answers.
We'll bring it up again when we
We
get to
can
that.
make sure you get that.
We'll see it again here shortly.
Okay,
when we get
yes,
to the
you'll see
actual
it in the
budget. We're
23.
going to question that item.
Okay. This is a slide of what you saw for the FY22 approved CIP, and this is this current year where we transferred $15,810,000 over to the capital improvement program for the first year of these projects. Then the next slide is the 23. The only project that has been added here is the one you mentioned, the Harbor Point East Connectivity Project. And based upon our review, there is funding available for everything on this page except the construction for that Harbor Point East project, the $2 million, which we would need to transfer next year from the seawall to the capital improvement program.
So what we're considering today are two line items. Line number 9, the Harbor Point East Connectivity Project for $550,000, and seawall capital repairs for $650,000, for a total of $1,200,000.
Yeah, which there is both funding available in the CIP plan.
Yeah. So that's all we're considering for this fiscal year
For this
budget
current
for the
fiscal
seawall.
year, yes.
Ms. Summers, you had a question?
Yes, so we had lots of questions around the Harbor Point East in the briefing that we got at the last meeting, and there seemed to be a high-level conceptual provided to us, but we didn't get into any details of what was actually going to be constructed as part of this park, and then who was going to be responsible for what. So I guess my question is, how did we arrive at the $2 million in construction cost estimate, as well as the $550,000 in engineering and design
I
fees?
think Mr. Edmonds might be able to help us out here.
Well, that is I would use the term Mark 1 eyeball estimate. We really haven't scoped that out very thoroughly, so that would be part of it. We've got to do some planning and design before we've got some real resolution on the numbers on that. But at present, it's more of an identified need to try and connect from what the port is planning on doing around to the water garden, and we think that there's a possibility to reutilize the ramps that used to be used to access the Columbus ships. But right now, those numbers are very preliminary.
So I guess my concern is we had some of the discussion at last meeting was those engineering and architecture fees range industries-wide around 8 to 12%. And right now, if the estimated cost is at $2 million, we're at 27.5%. So I guess.
Yeah, no, that's not based on any kind of scoping or negotiation on fees. That's just an estimate for upfront costs, really, is what that is. It's a budget that's to get the project started. I mean, we would not necessarily pay that amount in fees.
Okay, so we're going to have something brought to us before it's moved forward to approve the fees that are actually paid out on them.
Technically, it wouldn't come back. It would go to council with an AE contract, but we're not saying, we put some preliminary money in there to get the project started is what that is a budgetary figure.
Okay, but I guess we don't seem to know what the project entails and includes, but we're being asked to approve the budgets for it. So could we get a little more information on the project?
Well, let me turn it around if there's some discomfort on that. I mean, what would you be comfortable?
Can I just add, Ms. Summers, that we did, maybe, and you may have missed that meeting, but we did have the Port of Corpus Christi here presenting
Yeah,
their.
we saw the presentation and
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure you saw it, because we
Yeah.
can do a separate briefing with you if you hadn't, but, okay. I just want to
And
point that.
we had some questions about who was paying for it, and I'm sorry, I know
Okay,
I
no
didn't mean
worries.
to,
Yeah,
but,
okay.
as well as what the project entailed, we had talked about maybe changing some things. There was some discussion, I know Mr. Valls brought up the walkway and the safety concerns around the walkway, and so I just don't understand what this project is including
Okay,
at the moment.
understood. Okay, very good. I just want to make sure you've got that.
But thank you.
Yeah, and I don't either. So we've got to do some planning work there. We've got to do some assessment to determine if it is feasible to reutilize that, if there's some other better way to do it. Right now, it's just more of an identified need that we would like to try and connect into what the port's doing and provide connectivity for circulation around to the water garden. And there's an idea that we could potentially reutilize some of that existing infrastructure. That's about the extent of what we have at this point. And putting some money in year one, that allows us to have access to funding to answer some of those questions. Now, we're not saying it's going to take all of that funding. Any funding that's not used on those activities is available for construction later on. So I think we're also saying that, yeah, we need some money to prime the pump and get started on this, and this is not going to get you to the finish line. This is not going to get you construction.
Okay. I mean, I think we're all excited about the project. We're just looking for some clarification on what the project entails.
Right, and this money will help us answer those questions. So I don't have answers right now, and to get those answers, I'm going to have to spend some money. Am I going to spend all that money? No, I'm going to spend a small fraction of that to do some planning and assessment level work, and then if we think we've got a feasible project, we'll put out an RFQ, hire somebody to do detailed design, plans and specifications that we could bid out. But there's no money in this current year for construction, unless it would fit within that, which we don't expect it would.
Question also, Ms. Olivari?
Yeah, I do remember Mr. Pollock's presentation, but if I recall correctly, he's kind of stopped at what the Portland was, and then he said he was going to be working with the city on connectivity. So I think what maybe we're struggling with, is there a way that on this particular item, once you get that that architecture and engineering contract scoped, that it could be brought back to the board rather than going straight to the council?
Sure, and I think that there's probably a two-step process. We
Okay.
probably need to do a planning, conceptual design level effort, which we'd be more than happy to come back, and it would hopefully
Right,
answer
okay.
most of these questions.
Whatever, what steps you think are appropriate, I guess what I'm hearing is the board would just like to understand a little bit more about what's being considered as
Sure.
alternatives. Yeah.
Sure, and right now, we think there's some potential. We don't know for sure that this isn't fatally flawed. I mean, that's going to be part of it. I mean, we might come back and say, yeah, we figured out this isn't going to work, and, that's an end point, and
Well, you have another project in the middle of that too, which is, I guess, the hotel. I don't know what's happened with that, so that land over there is somehow in play, but I don't want to get into that. That's not my business. I had a second question.
I can't speak about that one.
I have a second question. It's just a little bit of a confusion when I'm trying to go back between current and approved and next year, and it has to do with the floodgates at the Science Museum. That seems to have jumped, or maybe I'm reading it wrong. It was 1.3, and now we're looking at it being, something on the level of 2.75. It seems like every time we touch that area, it gets more expensive, but is there a...
Well, if you went back far enough, it was in there for, I think, about $12 million, where we were improving the whole...
That whole stretch, yeah.
Yeah, so this has been back and forth. If you
Okay.
went back to '09, it was originally described as improving that entire waterfront from the Science Museum, all the way to the Art Museum. And back around 2016, we scaled that back, and we thought the area of maximum vulnerability was the area, the cantilever wall back behind the Science Museum. So we tried to move forward a project to just do that, and then we ran into headwinds at City Council, and they didn't award the design contract, and then some folks, DMD and the Planning Department, started expressing interest in providing some of that connectivity we're talking about, so we went back to the '09 concept, and that was actually approved in the CIP at one point. But then further discussions about the land ownership and, the uncertainty about the Corps of Engineers and what they were going to do, we went back to that kind of 2015 concept where we got to do something at the wall back behind the Science Museum. So we've left money in there to do that, and we've got to home that up with what the port's planning on doing, but there's also a desire to connect what they're doing, the kind of amenities and so forth, and connect that over the water garden. So that's the second part of that project.
Yeah, I knew they were kind of connected, which is why I was bringing them up, because if the port is going to be doing their work along that seawall section, if I understand the section we're talking about, is nothing they're planning on expending funds on going to make any of those improvements, or we're just going to be responsible for the actual?
Well, I don't think they're proposing to do anything to help with the flood wall part of that, but they were looking at building some kind of an overlook out there in that
That's what
vicinity.
I thought. Yeah, well, you can't build an overlook on a structure that's not...
Well, the structure's kind of behind where they're
Right.
planning that overlook, and there's a thought that maybe we could connect this and make this flow around to the water garden. That's what that second project is
Yeah,
looking
based
at.
on everything we've seen, the port's not doing any
Structural.
stabilization to the wall, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so it
all
might be
cosmetic.
something to bring up. I mean, I don't know, it just seems like that project has jumped $1 million, or more than, if
Yeah.
I'm reading it right, in pricing. So maybe we're doing a longer section, in which case the Poor Science Museum is unnecessarily called out, because it's really a area that protects the whole...
Downtown.
Yeah, the bayfront, yeah. sorry. It's not your improvement, but that section.
Right, well, and the concept has, when we were just looking at addressing that flood wall back in the, say, 2016 timeframe, we were actually looking at building a new wall along the
Right.
waterfront, along the hypotenuse of that kind of triangle area. Well, it's actually the port's property, and we'd have to, whatever we do, would have to get their approval. So we were
I
going to.
don't understand why we are responsible for the seawall on port property. I guess that's a primary question to me. I mean, if it's
When you
private,
say we-
if it's private, which it is.
Well,
in
the
that
downtown
sense.
is private, but it's.
No, but I mean, it's not city-owned property. It's port-owned property. And this goes back to years ago when we were working with FEMA. And, at that point, the idea was that, the Corps of Engineers or the port would be responsible for their own repairs. It sounds like, I don't know, maybe that's changed.
Well, I mean, we do own the Science and History Museum. And
Yes,
this
I
is the
understand that,
wall
yeah.
that
Right.
is built back behind the area where the Columbus ships
Were.
used to be. And that's the wall that is deficient, and it's owned by us, maintained by us. So, I'd love it if the port would come in and fix that, but they've indicated no real desire, or I'm not aware of any obligation of them to do that. So it is a wall that pretty much protects downtown Corpus Christi.
Right.
And a big storm surge event.
And their property as well. They're in, I mean, if that
Well,
wall
they're
is
not- they're not
breached,
as
then
at
it goes back
risk.
into their building.
Well, their building is, the new building is up kind of high. I mean, some of their buildings, like on Power Street, that would be vulnerable, but as would pretty much anything downtown be susceptible to damage if you had that kind of event. So nobody's got the gun to our head to do that, but we do know that's a vulnerability in the whole flood protection system that we
Right.
operate and maintain, and it's kind of the weak link in the chain. I mean, we maintain the seawall, we maintain the pump stations, it's kind of part of that whole system. So I feel like it fits within the mission of Type A, and the seawall CIP, it basically provides the same function.
Protecting our assets.
Protecting the downtown, I mean, that's what the seawall does. I mean, that's why it's
Right.
there. And
No disagreement. And I wasn't trying to, I was just trying to understand all the moving pieces, especially going in with this other project. So thank you for the information.
Just let the records reflect that Mr. Harris is present. Thank you. Yep. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Houlihan. Oh, you have some more?
There's more.
Okay, let's go.
I'll roll through it pretty quickly here. The overview of the seawall, to begin the year with about 18.6 million and 18.6 and 8.6 million in revenue, 3 million expenditures, and expect to end the year with 24.2 million in fund balance in that fund. This is just a quick glimpse of the debt service fund. We just transfer the money to the debt service, and the debt service fund pays the debt. A little over $1 million sitting in fund balance in this area. Then on to the arena fund. No changes here on this slide. Same sales tax as seawall, $8,589,000. Total revenue of $8,603,000. Again, here the admin bumped up to 10, and then the general fund transfer for administrative support actually dropped from 127 to 101,628. Total expenditures of 4,816,000 in this area. And this is the same slide we showed last time, so this would be the transfer over to the Visitors Facility Fund to help support the arena operations, much less than the previous year where we had some capital projects. So you can see the fiscal year 23 line items there, and no additional dollars being sent over for projects because the projects that were funded in 22 haven't been started, so we'll roll that forward to 23. And plus there may be some money left over from 21 in prior projects that the prior management company didn't finish, or they came in less.
And we can amend the budget later
We can
if,
certainly
once
do that also.
OVG 360 has an opportunity to have a look and see
Analyze
where they're
what
at
they-
and
right.
make sure everything's working properly and whatnot. But at the current part, they've been there such a short period of time,
Right.
they haven't really had an opportunity to evaluate what really needs to be done at this
That's
point.
correct.
But they can come back later. Perhaps maybe in the October meeting, they can come back and present.
We've heard from them, but they haven't done their full review of what they have over there. In the overview of the Arena Fund, 12.4 million in fund balance, 8.6 in revenues, 4.8 million in expenditures, and fund balance at the end of fiscal year '23 expected to be about 16.2 million. Just a snapshot of the Arena debt service, 3.2 million fund balance in this area. And then lastly, the business and job development, which no longer, it's all in the Type B fund now, just a little bit of interest income, 12,627. And this is where we made the, as I mentioned before, the baseball stadium. We put it back in here for the estimate, and we moved it out to another fund in fiscal year '23 because we don't have funding left in this area to fund that. And we had the economic development piece, the estimate for '22 was in this fund. We moved it back to the Type B. And then the major incentive project of 825, and then the 14,900 is transferring all the remaining funds in the Type A over to the B, so we can close out this particular area. Affordable housing, no change in this area. In the major business incentives, the $2, the $25,000 budgeted for the international consulting engineers and the $800 for the civil engineering program over at A&M. Small business projects, expect to spin those out in the estimate there, and nothing budgeted, all of it moved to the B. And then lastly, the overview here, began the year with 827 and closing that out so that we're able to close out this area. I'll stand by for any questions you might have.
Any questions? Ms. Olivar?
Technical thing. So if we are successful at closing out Type A sometime mid-year, then I assume you would close the corporation and the board would dissolve. Is that?
No, because we have three funds. Because you have three funds, this corporation will continue until 2026.
Oh, you're right,
when
because of the
seawall
other
arena
two
expire.
funds. But they would only be dealing with
With the
the
two funds.
seawall and arena. at that
That's
point.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
We got a motion to approve of Mr. Temez. Do I have a second? Question, Ms. Summers?
Oh, so sorry. Go ahead. Does that include having the architecture and engineering fees on the scope of the harbor
At this point, it
project?
does.
Coming back and having us approve what the total will be for that before
that-
they're expensed?
That's not really a part of the budget, so that's just a note that we're making, and we will bring it back to you.
Okay.
So, but it is
Thank you for
approving
that
the
clarification.
550 for the feasibility studies. It could be less. but-
Right. I just want
Yeah.
to get that clarified.
Which
Thank
is
you.
already in the CIP, left over from previous projects and interest earnings. And
Perfect. Thank you.
We have a
Second.
motion by Mr. Temez, second by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Huang.
thank you.
Can I entertain a motion to approve the resolution amending and reaffirming the
So move.
motion by Mr. Wilson, second by Ms. Olivari? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign, opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hulbert. You pulled a Randy on us.
I know, exactly.
Item 5, we've kind of already covered this. It's the Municipal League Annual Conference. Ms. Hulbert?
Yes. So this was requested by the chairman to include a discussion and possible action for the Type A board members who are interested to attend the Municipal League Annual Conference, or TML. So the estimated cost for this, so this is not something that's specifically budgeted for per se within the fund. And so right now, there are 3 members who are interested. Total cost would be $6,135 estimated. And this is something that would need to go to the city council for approval, since it's not specifically defined within the budget. So,
Can I entertain a motion to approve the estimated expenditures for the Municipal League Conference?
Chairman, can I just add one thing here?
Yes, yes.
So just to point out, this, in the 20 years that this tax venue has been around, we've never used it for a conference. Just want to make sure the board's aware of that before you vote. You all have gone to training as required by Texas law, but never to a conference, so we just want to point that out. And because it's not necessarily administration, it will go to city council for their consideration. So there'd be a level of exposure there as well. Just want to point that out to the board.
So I have a motion, I need a motion to approve the expenditure.
Are we including the actual amount, or that's just an estimate? It's just
that is just an estimate.
Okay, so we're not including the amount in the motion. It's just to approve, okay. All right.
Approve the attendance, I
Attendance,
guess, yeah.
very good.
Do I hear a motion?
Can I don't we have to add an amount to the, there's going to be an amount we'll take to city council
We
for.
can do the estimated amount of $6,135.
Yeah, not to
Yeah, do
exceed.
that estimated,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks, Rebecca. Right, because it's not, anybody can attend the conference, you don't need the board's approval to go. It's whether or not you use the tax dollars.
We don't need approval.
No.
Okay, it's just city council. Okay.
Yeah, the question is, do you use the tax dollars to go to the conference? Not can you go? You can
Okay.
certainly go, but it's the tax dollars issues.
Just to reimbursement.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So it was 6,135?
I believe so, yes.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Holbert.
Okay, thank you.
Item H6,
They
engineering.
didn't, but there was no vote, I don't think.
I'm sorry?
Or, yeah, we need a motion, second vote.
There was no motion made.
Yeah, that we need to complete.
Mr. Zanoni said that this is not a voting.
No, let me clarify what I said. So this action, if the action that's required here is to set aside tax dollars from the Type B or Type A to send some of the board members to this conference. And so the action that we would take to city council similarly would have a dollar value to it. That's the issue. It's not whether or not board members could go to the conference. Board members can go as board members or individual persons. But the issue is to use this money, we need your approval, and then we'll need council's approval to use this money to send people to the conference.
The city council attendees, is that on their own, or is that through the city council budget?
That's, I think some of them use city council budgets, but the difference there is a precedent, long precedent of doing so. That's the cautionary note to you all today, is that in the 20 years the venue's been around, never has it been used to send somebody to a conference.
Okay.
Right.
So we're 20 years too late.
You can look at it that way if you
Okay,
like.
so now I need to entertain a motion.
It's like a motion to authorize an amount not to exceed $6,135 for Type A board members to attend the TML annual conference. That would be my
Yes.
suggestion. Is there a motion?
Since I'm one of the persons that are going, can I make a motion, or is that a conflict of interest?
Motion by Mr. Temez, second. Need a second?
Go ahead.
I'll do the second, but I'm
Okay.
going also.
Second, Mr. Harris.
So now we know 2 of the 3 that are going.
Right.
So, yeah, I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed, same sign?
Aye.
1 no.
Thank you.
Is there a no?
Yes.
Who?
1, 2, 3, 4. Wilson?
Oh, Mr. Wilson voted no, okay. Okay, sure. Can we do a roll call just to
Sure.
be on the safe side? Okay, so I have Ms. Oliveri first.
I'm going to abstain on this one. I don't know about it.
Okay, I'm gonna abstain.
Having a hard time with it.
Okay, Ms. Summers?
I'm going to abstain as well.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Temes?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson? No?
No.
Okay, Mr. Voss is absent. Mr. Harris?
Aye.
And President Trujillo?
Yes.
The state.
Okay, I think President voting, right, because it's a motion. We have 3 votes in favor. So it's off of 6.
Right,
So-
president voting, that's,
It's still 4.
president would be 4.
Right.
We might have to check our bylaws to see what. the
Yeah,
rule
that's
is.
very close, so let's double check, because it's a motion, so for
Right.
motions, president voting works. But we have 2 abstentions. So let's just look at the bylaws really quickly.
So 4 doesn't pass it?
4 does, but I don't have 4.
Well, then I don't understand what's the problem.
There were 3 yes and 1 no.
Oh, 1 no. Oh, I got it.
So it's not the majority that are present.
I see.
It's still,
I missed the no.
you're still
I'm
trying to
sorry.
get through the hurdle
Yeah,
of 4.
4,
So that's what you're going to look into.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just double check.
I'll be off the board, but, you know. Okay. So you'll get back to us at the next meeting. All right, thank you. All right, item H6, engineering service quarterly update. Mr. Edmonds?
Good afternoon. Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering Services. I'm going to run through our quarterly engineering update. So the first project is the McGee Beach Breakwater and Marina Dredging Project. That is substantially complete, and we're going to close out on that construction contract. So, looks very nice, much nicer if you want to go out
That
there and
looks
fish.
fantastic. We've been waiting for this for a long time. And there's lighting on this walkway?
No.
Okay. Take your
During the day,
flashlight.
there is.
Yeah, it looks great.
Salt Flats Levee Project, that construction contract was awarded. We are still wrangling with some coordination issues with Union Pacific Railroad, so not seeing much going on out there. But the latest information was that we're getting ready to clear that gate and be able to release the contractor. Art Museum repairs and improvements, that project is under construction. That was awarded to South Texas Building Partners, and that is moving. Estimated completion is end of the year. Art Center improvements, that is, the design is complete, and that is scheduled to be advertised for bids. Should be out now if, or very shortly. The C District Water Garden, that is, we awarded the design phase part of the contract. We did it in a 2-step fashion, so they're working on that, the design builder, and we should be bringing a contract for the balance of the construction to council, I would say, in the next month or 2.
Okay, Jeff, the current budget is 4.5 million.
Correct.
But you said a while ago it was 2.9 million?
Did I say that? No, it's 4.5, sorry.
No, when Leah asked you, did you?
No, I was talking about the science. I
You
wasn't
didn't ask
talking
about
about,
the water garden?
no, I wasn't talking
No,
about
she was
the
talking
water.
about it. We'll get to the one she was talking about.
Because that water garden amount has changed back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
What, 2
Yeah, that
million?
one changed a lot too, but it only went in one direction.
But it's less than 4.5?
Well, take it back. It did change back. You know, we went as high as like 8 million, but you may remember, this board was not willing to go that high, and we had to go back to the drawing board.
But that's when it was included with the other water park.
Well, it was 10 million combined with the other one, and we left money in for the I don't know if it's got an official title. We call it the Bayshore Fountain, and then we had to do some re-engineering on this one to try and get down within the pain threshold of this board. So we're working with the design build contract now. We're hoping that we can get close to that budget figure. So more to follow soon on that. The Marina project, the ABC, D, and L pier replacement, and also dredging. We are waiting for a Corps of Engineers permit approval before we put that out for bid, and we're expecting that in the near future.
Going back to that service station, have we looked into it for the marina? I inquired about what does Port Aransas has, and Aransas Pass, and the city of Rockport, with the county involved, and they all have little service stations there, facilities. So
Fuel station.
Yeah, I can't really
I wonder if can
speak
we
to
inquire
that.
as to how they came about to that, or how much did it cost, or how's it, how much does it take for an upkeep, preventive maintenance on it, or how come we can't get
I was
one?
present at another meeting where I understand the Marina is working on this, and they felt they were getting close to a solution. But
Mr. Sononi?
I know we had talked about a
fuel station for
Yeah, the
A
fuel
mobile
station at the
fuel
marina, so, let me think what, we had a budget meeting where I brought this up about 2-3 weeks ago with Jonathan Atwood, so I believe he is, working with another person that would provide that, as well as other services at the marina.
Yeah.
From another location down by the Gulf area, in fact. And so that business partner that's established here has expressed interest in doing two things. One, having a fuel station, and then doing some other business at the marina. So we have a new plan that's looking pretty good because of the potential vendor is a solid one.
Mr. Wilson, did I answer your
I was just going to concur that
Yeah.
my recollection was that they had looked at whether the city would operate or go to a private third party, and
Right.
decided private third party was the better route to go.
Right.
It sounds like they're trying to progress on that now.
Yeah, that's the concept we went moving on. So the initial third-party vendor at the time was one of the tackle shop owners there at the L Head, but that business model didn't prove out for whatever reason. But so there's a new private sector partner that we're working with to bring that.
Port Aransas has a real nice one.
Right.
I said, hey,
Yeah, they do. We're fully aware of that. Today, to help the customers that moor there or keep their boats there, we do bring in fuel with a tanker on the weekends. However, the long-term plan is to have a fuel station with good prices so we can get some of that competition away from Port Aransas.
Okay, the next project is the People's Boardwalk, and we have selected Jacobs Engineering on that, and we are in the scoping and negotiation phase on that project, and the design contract should be going to council, I'd say, next month. The Marina Boat Haul-Out facility, they have completed the selection on that, and they're getting ready to enter the scoping and negotiation phase, and the same with the Cooper's boating facility. Two different design firms. And this is the one we were discussing, the flood wall upgrades at the Science Museum. And this kind of has moved around. Of course, you know, now the way that we were planning to do that back in 2016 is not really available now because Port is wanting to put this observation deck in that space, which means we've got to go back to something behind that at the location of the existing wall rather than building a new wall on the water side of that. So I think that's why that changed from the previous number.
So their plans have increased, is that what I hear you say?
I would have to say that because
Okay.
you know, if you went back in the way it looked previously in the CIP, we were going to build a new wall across the hypotenuse of that triangle. And so, you know, the length is going to be longer. I think that's why that is. But basically, the old concept is going to be obsoleted by what the Port's proposing to do on that property.
So I know this is a very tender area, and I hate to bring it up, but given that they want to do that, is there any way to estimate what the cost would have been to us and what the additional increment is? And perhaps Mr. Zanoni or someone could broach with them paying that differential?
I guess,
I mean, would it be helpful if it came from us for that to be raised with them?
I'd be more than happy for you to raise that with them. The first time I saw what they were proposing out there, I'm like, okay, well, that's a fly in the ointment for what we were planning to do to shore up the flood wall. But, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Absolutely.
This is, what we're having to do now is probably not the least expensive way to skin that cat.
Well, and the whole project may be an asset, I'm not saying that, but my point is, I'm hanging something off that structure. Maybe I should contribute to the stability of the incremental increase in cost to the city because of that.
Yeah, of course, and what I would say if I were them, I'm like, well, it's my property. I'm just using my property, and
Yeah, but you're going out over your seawall, right?
Well, they're
tying into your seawall somehow.
Well, they're actually going out from their property, from part of a wall that they maintain. That's where they're accessing that area, but they are going out into that area where we had planned to just backfill back behind the wall. Anyway.
Back in 2016, we talked about it, and the cost then was $10 million.
That was when we were looking at the entire
Yes.
waterfront.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've changed from that. So now we've kind of got
I think
two.
that went all the way around the art museum even, right?
That was the plan. That was the
You can see
original.
it right there, it's the same picture right here.
Yeah, but they're only talking that little increment.
No
If you
little
go
increment,
back-
that's a big area right there.
If you look at that.
All that green part right there, alongside the water, which is.
Correct. If you look at that triangle,
That's
though,
a
what
good,
we were.
that's a good 2-3 city blocks long. That's a long ways. And to repair that bulkhead, that seawall there.
Right, well, so the thought is, what we're looking at now is just the wall that we maintain, which is the wall at the Science Museum.
Yeah, but that's the wall 20 yards behind the bulkhead.
Yeah, but it doesn't, what I'm trying to say is, if you're going towards the art museum, there's property in there that belongs to the Corps of Engineers. It does not include that stretch.
Correct. And so, and part of the reason that was done was to provide connectivity and access around there. So the thought was that we could maybe provide some of that functionality with this project. And
So basically, simply, we're going to take care of our property, and maybe it's a good thing to communicate with the port to see if they could, what we do is complementary to what they do.
and we absolutely have, and that's where this project came from.
But we're just going to take care of our property.
Yeah, but what belongs to the city and what belongs to the port is the question.
That's not what he's saying.
Right, there's just two parts to the project, and the original one many years ago had both in one. We were going to fund over $10 million, and once we discovered that, most of that property doesn't even belong to the city, it's the ports or the Army Corps of Engineers, I said time out. I don't know why we're spending our money to benefit other people's property. So what we did say in the current year budget is let's just take care of the seawall portion, the bulkheading, because that has an impact on downtown. Even though we don't own the land behind the seawall, most of it, we thought it benefits us because it's a flood protection. That's our business. So we scaled the budget way back just to take care of that seawall refurbishment and shoring. The port along this way said, we're going to do this new Harbor East project. So we said, well, let's look at it again. Maybe we could partner with them to enhance theirs to connect to our museums and other attractions in the vicinity. We haven't decided anything. As Jeff said earlier, that $500,000 will help us in that. It won't cost $500 to figure this out, but some of those dollars will be used on programming and scenarios of probable best outcomes. But the city is not jumping at the bit to spend our money to benefit other people's property. We got enough problems on our own. And so, especially with this tax, it's a limited, specific purpose tax. And so that's where we're at today. So we have still budgeted the seawall flood protection project, and we'll continue to work with the port to see how much of our money could use to augment their project so it connects more to our facilities, our attractions.
Yeah, and this was based on something they came up with. They thought, hey, maybe we could connect to use that walkway, and then somehow you connect that over the water garden. It's kind of a gleam in the eye at this point. We haven't really done any real study and analysis on that.
Who's in charge of this project of the port?
At the port, well, ultimately it'd be Sean Strawbridge, but we are working with Pollock, with Mr. Pollock, who's their strategic planner.
Jeff?
Yes, sir. Yeah, he's the one that came here to present to you all recently.
Is there any way we can meet with him? I mean,
We can bring him back,
Jeff,
yeah.
you and I and Lee or whoever.
Oh,
Well, he
sure.
was here.
Yeah, he was here, but we didn't discuss that project. I mean, that part of the project. He only discussed the part of the park,
Yeah.
right?
Well, he had a slide that illustrated this, but he didn't really mention that aspect.
Question, Mr. Oliver?
I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't, thank you for the clarification, City Manager. My point was just that if we have information that says, because of their plans for this overlook, it is going to increase the cost of our project, that we at least discuss with them the possibility that they help with that incremental cost. That was simply what I was asking to consider. I mean, I don't know that it does. You're the engineer. I don't want to get in the middle of your
Economies of scale, basically. So we got,
it's really what
we know how
happened.
many linear feet it is, and here's
No.
ours, and here's theirs. And
I think what I'm understanding, maybe I got it wrong, but here we have this linear structure, and they're coming in and they're putting this overlook in. Maybe Scott could speak to this too. And because of the way that would interact with our seawall, we may have an incremental increased cost to fortify that main seawall. Is that?
I'd say we've got to do something a little bit different than the way it was previously conceived.
I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, then I think we should kind of talk to them about helping with that additional cost. That was my
Well,
point.
I'd be happy to have a conversation with Jeff about that.
continue.
Oh, well, that's it.
That's it?
My last
Okay.
slide, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Redmond.
That
Mr.
concludes my
Zanoni?
presentation.
Any executive director comments?
No, just, we heard them in that prior board meeting, the type B. So just to remind you all that what's in this budget today will appear in the city manager's budget next week, and then we'll have community input and city council workshops, and the budget will be ultimately adopted in the near future.
Thank you, sir. All right, there be no further
Sir,
business.
I just wanted to give the result of the vote for the item that was in question, item number 3. So we did look at the bylaws. Section 2.4 of the bylaws refers to quorum. It says, "The act of a majority of the directors present at a meeting at which a quorum is in attendance shall constitute the act of the board and of the corporation." So it doesn't say present and voting, it says present. So present is 6, that's how many we have today. So for a majority of 6 is 4. So at this point, we have 3 affirmative votes. So that means that the motion failed.
Okay.
Could I make an alternative motion to perhaps as a recommendation to the city council that that we pay for the cost of whatever the cost is to attend the conference in terms of the, what do you call that, fee for the
Registration fee and
because I know
the
those can
lodging.
be pretty extensive, and if you go through the city, it would be a lesser fee because I think it would count as a membership.
Can we
Actually-
bring this back to a vote next meeting?
That's good.
And I don't want to belabor the point, but, I'm not going to be around at that point in time, so it doesn't affect me. But I do think that anytime you have an opportunity to network with other Type B organizations that will be present at the Municipal League, hopefully the knowledge and ideas that you bring back to the board, we're talking about a minute cost here in consideration of the millions of dollars that this board controls. So it's not a fun time, hey, let's go to San Antonio and have a great time. I mean, you're attending conferences, you're getting knowledge, and hopefully you'll bring expertise back and ideas that this board can capitalize on. So I'm not here to apologize that we want to go on this, but I do think it's important.
And I'll add to this, if there may be other board members who have never been, I go to this thing every year, and really it's an educational opportunity for those who are elected officials and those who serve on boards that are appointed by elected officials. And there's almost every hour of this conference, there's something that would benefit A and B board, whether it be different types of funding that are available for projects, whether it be affordable housing. They talk about all of these kind of things that directly relate to our roles and responsibilities here. So when the chair, the president, brought this up, I thought it would be something that's it'd be beneficial for us. So I agreed to that, and that's kind of where I stood. But I know what this type of event can offer in the way of our roles here. So that's why I'm for it, and that's why I voted the way I did. So.
Thank you. There being no further business, we'll call this meeting adjourned, 3:00.